Morning all. Alright, so in the continuing look at the NHL's history, season by season, we're up to the 1952-1953 season. So we're a decade into the original six era, and there was almost a seventh team. So we'll get to that. The Detroit Red Wings, again, first in the National Hockey League. This is an era where that's just kind of what happens. They finished 36-16-18 under coach Tommy Ivan. 222 goals scored, 133 goals against, 90 points. So 90 points, still pretty good in a 70-game season, right? The Montreal Canadiens finished second at 28-23-19. 155 goals scored, 148 goals against, and a total of 75 points, of course. Dick Irvin, still the coach in Montreal. What's interesting is there's only 8 points between these four teams on the board. So parity is seen as being part of the league that year, which is unusual during the original six era. Boston finishes a little below 500, 28-29-13 record under coach Lynn Patrick. 152 goals scored, 172 goals against, 69 points for the Boston Bruins. The Chicago Blackhawks, same number of points, 69 points, a record of 27-28-15 under player and coach Sid Abel. So Sid Abel is coaching and playing. 169 goals scored, 175 goals against, in a season that is a large improvement for Chicago. Toronto just misses the playoffs with 67 points. They finished 27-30-13 under coach Joe Primo. 156 goals scored, 167 goals against. And in last place, the New York Rangers under Bill Cook, 17-37-16 record, 152 goals scored, 211 goals against, and 50 points. So the Hawks, as mentioned, Sid Abel joins the team. Al Rollins is traded to Chicago as well, and it leads to the best season they had had in 7 seasons. Jacques Plante, Glenn Hall, and Gump Worsley start their careers. I forgot the E at the end of Plante there, so it becomes Plant, but it is Plante, and I got it right over here. So 3 Hall of Fame goaltenders get started here, and honestly, the goaltending during this era is fantastic. November 8th of 1952, Maurice Richard sets an NHL record with his 325th career NHL goal. March 5th of 1953, Gordie Howe breaks his own record of points in a season by passing 86 points. So he's close to the century mark, and we're almost there to players getting 100-point seasons and all that. March 24th of 1955, Terry Sawchuk records his 3rd straight playoff shutout, which is an NHL record. And that is up here, meaning it spans more than one playoff season. November 1st of 1952, the Leafs beat the Bruins 3-2 in the first game that's televised across the country of Canada. And so a tradition is born. I don't know if they played, I don't know if it was technically Hockey Night in Canada. I don't know if it was a really, hyped thing, but it's going to be. December 6th of 1952, Detroit beats Chicago 2-0 in a game that's played in Indianapolis. So this is the first neutral site game played by the National Hockey League. Something we would see come back and be kind of prominent in the NHL for a little while before it went away. I do think neutral site games are fun. I think it's a good way to drum up interest in certain markets. But at any rate, they played a game in Indianapolis. January 29th of 1953, Maurice Richard records his 10th straight 20-goal season. That is an NHL record at the time. Keep in mind, it is not an 80-game season. It's a 70-game season, and when he started out, there were less games than that. And it's a 5-2 win that night, too, over the New York Rangers. March 22nd of 1953, Gordie Howe becomes the first player in NHL history to win the Art Ross Trophy 3 times in a row, because the season ended on March 22nd. So, season ended a little earlier than it does now, but 70-game season and all that. The NHL nearly adds a 7th franchise, the Cleveland Barons, and they decided, all right, so in order to prove that this is financially viable, can you deposit $425,000, to which the Barons eventually said, nope, we don't quite have that, and so the Cleveland Barons are told to apply again later. So this is 1953. Cleveland would eventually join the NHL. It is a long time after 1952-53. Arthur Wirtz and James Norris become the owners of the struggling Chicago Blackhawks. And not just struggling in terms of getting to a winning record, but they're not financially doing all that well either. So this is where the Wirtz family comes in for them. January 18th of 1953, Detroit Red Wings general manager Jack Adams, you know, the one that the coaching trophy's named after, he enters an official's room to argue with the referee of the game, Red Story. So Dick Irvin of the Habs, the team that Detroit was playing against that night, not happy with that, and neither was Clarence Campbell. So there's a fine that's imposed of $500 on Jack Adams for having the nerve to go into the referee's room to discuss things with the ref. And it wasn't much of a discussion, it was more of an argument. All right, Gordie Howe does lead the league in scoring that year. 70 games, 49 goals, 46 assists for 95 points. So very close to the century mark, plus only 1 goal short of tying Gordie Howe's 50-goal record. Ted Lindsay, 70 games, 32 goals, 39 assists, 71 points. Maurice Richard, the aforementioned Rocket, 70 games, 28 goals, 33 assists, 61 points. Wally Hergenheimer. Hergesheimer. It's Hergesheimer, right? I knew I was going to mess that up. It's a great name. New York Rangers, 70 games, 30 goals, 29 assists, 59 points. Hergesheimer. Maybe that's why I don't know who he is, because they just went, you got to get it. That's too many letters. Lose some letters and call us back. Alex Delvecchio for Detroit finishes 5th in scoring, 70 games, 16 goals, 43 assists, 59 points. But I had to highlight the goalies here, didn't I? So you got Terry Sawchuk in Detroit, 32, 15, and 16, 1.89 goals against average and 9 shutouts. Jim Henry in Boston, 28, 29, and 13, 2.43 goals against and 8 shutouts. Harry Lumley, now playing for Toronto, 27, 30, and 13, 2.34 goals against and 10 shutouts. Al Rollins in Chicago, 27, 28, and 15, 2.5 goals against and 6 shutouts. Jerry McNeil in Montreal before Jacques Plante takes over for him. 25, 23, and 18, 2.09 goals against average, 10 shutouts. And Gump Worsley making his debut in New York, 13, 29, and 8 record, 3.02 goals against and 2 shutouts. The trophy winners that year, Gordie Howe wins the Hart Trophy again. He also wins the Art Ross, as mentioned. The Calder Trophy goes to Gump Worsley of the New York Rangers. The Vezina, of course, Terry Sawchuk of Detroit, because it's awarded to best goals against average, and he has a 1.89, so there you go, sir. And the Lady Byng goes to Red Kelly of the Detroit Red Wings. So your all-stars around the NHL that year. First team all-star, down the middle, Fleming McKell of the Boston Bruins. And Alex Delvecchio of Detroit is second-team All-Star. On the right side, Gordie Howe of Detroit is first-team. Maurice Richard of Montreal, second-team. It feels like that's been the first and second-team All-Stars for quite some time on the right side. On the left side, it is again Ted Lindsay, who is first-team. Bert Olmsted makes his debut on this chart. Second-team All-Star for Montreal, and the first time I've mentioned him in this series. On the blue line, Red Kelly and Doug Harvey are your first-team All-Stars of Detroit and Montreal, respectively. Second-team, Bill Gadsby of Chicago. Bill Quackenbush of Boston, your second-team All-Stars. Terry Sawchuk's first-team All-Star in net. Jerry McNeil of Montreal is the second-team All-Star. So you get to the playoffs. And in the semifinal, you've got Detroit and Boston, a matchup of 1 and 3. Chicago and Montreal meet in a battle of 2 and 4. Detroit wins the first game of that series against Boston 7-0, and that's when Boston gets mad. They win the second game 5-3. They win the third game 2-1 in overtime, and then they win game 4 by a score of 6-2. Detroit then goes home, having to win down 3-1, and they do. They win 6-4, and then Boston wins 4-2 to win the series in 6. In the other series, Montreal and Chicago, they go the full 7. Montreal wins the first 2 games, 3-1, and then 4-3, both of those at home. And then Chicago kind of takes over the series for a bit. A 2-1 win in overtime in Game 3. In Game 4, they win 3-1, and then in Game 5, they go into Montreal and win 4-2. So all they got to do is win one game, but Montreal doesn't lose another. They win 3-0 in Chicago and then 4-1 at home to win the series in 7 games. But exciting series. So it's Montreal and Boston, which is a bad matchup for Boston. Montreal wins the first game 4-2. Boston wins the second game 4-1, which might have been a bad idea because Montreal wins 3-0 and 7-3 in Boston. So clearly they were ticked off about that loss at home. And then game 5, Montreal wins in overtime 1-0 to win the Stanley Cup. best of 7 in 5. So, again, it's a bad matchup for Boston. Though Ed Sanford of Boston is the leading scorer in the playoffs, 11 games, 8 goals, 3 assists, 11 points. Boom Boom Geoffrion from Montreal, 12 games, 6 goals, 4 assists, 10 points to lead them in scoring in the playoffs. Jacques Plante has a 1.75 goals against average in the playoffs. McNeil has a 1.98 goals against average in the playoffs, which kind of foreshadows that Plante's going to take over for McNeil. So there you go. The 1952-53 season. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.